The grand hall shimmered in gold and white. Crystal chandeliers casting warm light across silk-covered tables, violins playing a soft melody as guests murmured with laughter and clinking glasses. It was a perfect evening, the kind people dreamed of when they thought of love stories that ended happily. The bride, Alina, stood radiant under an arch of roses, her eyes glistening with tears of joy as she held her groom's hand. Cameras flashed. A new chapter of life was beginning. But then the doors burst open. The music screeched to a stop. Every head turned toward the massive oak doors at the back of the hall, where a small boy, no older than 9, stood trembling, his chest heaving as though he'd run miles. His clothes were dusty, his hair messy, and in his thin arms he clutched something wrapped in a pale blue blanket. A murmur rippled through the guests. "Oh, is that?" whispered someone near the front. "Is he lost?" asked another. The boy's wide, fearful eyes scanned the room, locking onto the bride. His lips quivered, but his voice rang out, clear and shaking with emotion. "Please, don't marry him." The gasps spread like fire through the hall. The groom froze, his hand still holding Alina's. The photographer lowered his camera. The priest blinked in disbelief. What did you say?" Alina stammered, stepping forward, her heels echoing on the marble floor. The boy swallowed hard, tears spilling over his cheeks. "You can't marry him," he said again, clutching the bundle closer to his chest. "Please, he's lying to you." The groom, Daniel, finally moved. His face, handsome and calm only moments ago, twisted with anger. "Who is this kid?" Security. But no one moved. The entire hall seemed paralyzed, curiosity chaining every guest to the moment unfolding before them. Alina's heart thudded painfully, something in the boy's eyes, the desperate sincerity, made her hand tremble. "Wet," she said quietly, raising her hand to stop Daniel. "Let him speak." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Alina, this is insane. He's just some kid." But she didn't look at him. She was watching the child, who now stepped slowly down the aisle, his small legs shaking, the blue bundle clutched tightly against his chest. The silence was deafening. Even the violinists froze, bows suspended midair. When he reached the front, the boy stopped. He looked up at the woman in the white dress, eyes filled with tears. "Please, don't marry him," he whispered again, voice breaking. "He hurt my mommy. He said she didn't matter. But she told me to find you." Alina's face drained of color. "You're your mother." The boy nodded. "She said you needed to know the truth before it's too late." Daniel took a step forward, his voice suddenly harsh. "Enough! This is ridiculous. Someone get this child out of here." But no one dared move. The priest looked from the boy to Daniel, frowning. The air felt heavy, charged with something unspoken. Then, the boy slowly unwrapped the blanket, revealing a tiny newborn baby asleep in his arms. The room collectively gasped. "This is my baby sister," he said softly. "Her name is Hope, and she's his daughter." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the sound of breathing seemed to vanish. Alina stared at the baby. The soft tufts of dark hair. The little fist curled against the blanket. Her mind screamed to deny it, to call it a misunderstanding, but the boy's eyes, so honest, so wounded, left no space for denial. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is he talking about?" Daniel's face had gone pale, his confident mask cracking. "This is absurd," he muttered. "Some crazy kid. Probably sent by someone trying to ruin this day." But the boy took a shaky step forward, tears streaming freely now. "I'm not lying. My mommy's name is Sarah. You promised her everything. But when she told you she was going to have Hope, you left. You said you'd never see us again." Alina's heart pounded so loud it drowned out the murmurs behind her. The name, Sarah, echoed in her mind like a ghost from another life. She turned back to Daniel, her eyes sharp with disbelief and dread. "Daniel, who is Sarah?" "I don't know her." He snapped too quickly. The boy flinched. His lower lip trembled, but he held the baby tighter. "You do. You're lying." The groom's composure shattered completely. "You don't know what you're talking about, kid." "I do." The boy screamed, startling everyone. His voice echoed off the marble walls. "You said you didn't want us. That you'd start a new life with her instead." He pointed a trembling finger at Alina. "You said she had money, and you needed someone like her to fix your life." The hall filled with shocked whispers. Alina took a step back as if struck. Her chest ached. She looked at Daniel, searching his eyes for denial, for any trace of the man she thought she knew. But what she saw there wasn't confusion. It was fear. Real, cold fear. The priest quietly stepped away from the altar. The violinists began packing their instruments, unsure of what else to do. The boy's sobs filled the silence. "Please," he said again, looking up at Alina, his small face desperate. "Don't marry him. He doesn't love you. My mommy, she died 2 weeks ago." His voice cracked. "She told me to come find you, and to tell you the truth before it's too late." A cry escaped Alina's lips. Soft, broken, like glass shattering under pressure. The baby in the boy's arms stirred, whimpering softly. The entire hall was still, as if time itself had stopped. And in that frozen moment, as a child's tears fell onto marble floors, and a bride's heart broke before hundreds of eyes, a truth long buried clawed its way to the surface. One that would change every life in that room forever. The silence was suffocating. Every guest in the grand hall seemed frozen in place, torn between disbelief and horror. The chandeliers above flickered faintly, as though even the light itself hesitated to bear witness. Alina's lips trembled. She stared at the boy. At the small, shaking figure holding a newborn as though she were the last fragile piece of a broken world. Her heart pounded against her ribs, every beat louder than the last. "Daniel." She whispered again, her voice barely audible. "Is it true?" Daniel clenched his fists. "No," he hissed, his eyes darting nervously between the guests, the priest, and the boy.
"This is nonsense!"
Some pathetic attempt to ruin what's supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. But his words rang hollow. There was no conviction in them. Only fear. The boy shook his head, clutching the baby tighter. "You're lying. You came to our house all the time. You promised Mommy you'd take us to see the ocean when Hope was born. You said she'd have your last name." Daniel's face turned ghostly white. "That's enough." He lunged forward suddenly, reaching for the boy. But Alina moved faster. She stepped between them, her veil trembling as her voice rang out, sharp and trembling. "Don't you dare touch him." The outburst stunned everyone. Even Daniel froze mid-step. Tears blurred Alina's vision, but her resolve was unshakable. She turned to the boy, kneeling so her eyes were level with his. "Sweetheart," she said gently, her voice breaking. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Eli. Eli," she repeated softly, as if committing it to memory. "And your baby sister's name is Hope, right?" He nodded. Alina's eyes glistened as she reached out, brushing the edge of the blue blanket. "You've been so brave, Eli. You came here all by yourself." Eli sniffled, his small shoulders trembling. "I had to. Mommy said if I didn't tell you, he'd hurt you too." The words struck Alina like a knife. She turned toward Daniel slowly. Not as a woman in love, but as someone seeing a stranger for the first time. Her voice was quiet, controlled. "You need to tell me the truth. Right now." Daniel's jaw tightened. "He's lying," he repeated, but this time there was panic in his tone. "You think I'd..." "Enough," Alina shouted, her voice shaking the hall. "Look me in the eyes, Daniel. Tell me this isn't your child." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat bobbed as he struggled to form words, his expression crumbling under the weight of hundreds of eyes. Eli looked at him, his small voice trembling but defiant. "She told me you'd pretend not to know. But she said you always wear the same watch. The one she bought for your birthday. The one you said she should never tell anyone about." Every gaze in the hall fell to Daniel's wrist. The silver watch gleamed under the chandelier. Engraved along the edge were 2 small letters, S&D Sarah and Daniel. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Alina felt her knees weaken, her vision blurred. For a brief dizzying moment she thought she might faint. The world seemed to spin, the music, the whispers, the cold realization that the man she thought she loved was not the person she believed he was. Her voice broke as she whispered, "You lied to me." Daniel took a desperate step forward. "Alina, please. Listen to me. It wasn't like that. Sarah and I, you what?" She cut him off sharply, her tone trembling with fury. "You loved her. You made her believe you'd build a life together. You had a child with her." Daniel's voice faltered. "It was a mistake," he said quietly, almost pleading. "It was before us, before I met you." She said she couldn't. "She couldn't what?" Alina snapped. "Couldn't keep quiet about your secret." He flinched as if struck. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Eli's eyes filled with tears. "Mommy said you always say that. That things weren't supposed to happen." A few guests began to whisper. Someone covered their mouth. The air was heavy with shock, shame, and disbelief. Alina's trembling hand went to her chest. The world she'd built in her mind, The fairy tale romance. The perfect wedding, the man she thought she'd grow old with. All of it cracked and fell apart before her eyes. Her voice turned cold, each word sharp enough to wound. You were going to marry me, while your baby was barely a week old. Daniel's eyes darted toward the exits. His composure was gone. Sweat glistened on his forehead. I didn't know She wasn't supposed to tell anyone. She promised? You mean the woman who's dead now? Alina's voice trembled with disgust. You wanted her to take your secret to the grave. He froze. And for the first time, the full horror of his actions seemed to settle on the room. Eli clutched his sister close, his small voice breaking through the tension. She didn't want to die. She got sick after Hope was born. She said she forgave you. But she wanted you to tell the truth. Alina covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. The priest lowered his eyes, muttering a prayer under his breath. Somewhere near the back, an elderly woman sobbed quietly. Daniel took another step forward, his voice low, desperate. Alina, please. I was scared, okay? I made mistakes, but I love you. I can fix this. We can still. She stepped back sharply, her expression hardening through the tears. Don't you dare say you love me. You don't even know what love is. Daniel froze mid-sentence, the rejection hitting him like a blow. Love, she continued, her voice breaking, isn't lying. It isn't hiding a family, a child, to protect your reputation. Love doesn't destroy someone's life just to build your own. Eli's small sob echoed through the hall. The baby whimpered softly, as if feeling the tension that hung thick in the air. For a long, unbearable moment, no one spoke. Then Alina took a deep breath, wiped her tears, and reached out her arms toward Eli. Come here, sweetheart. He hesitated, but then slowly, trustingly, walked into her embrace. She wrapped her arms around him and the tiny baby, holding them close as if shielding them from everything cruel in the world. When she looked up again, her eyes no longer shimmered with heartbreak. They burned with something else. Strength. Get out, Daniel, she said quietly. Before I forget how to be graceful. He stood frozen, as if unsure whether she meant it. Now, she whispered. And with that single word, cold, final, and trembling, the man turned and walked away from his own wedding. The echo of his footsteps drowned by the sobs and gasps that filled the room. Alina stood beneath the arch of roses, her white dress stained with tears, a baby in her arms, and a little boy clinging to her side. The wedding that was supposed to mark the beginning of her happily ever after had become something else entirely. The beginning of a truth she never expected to face. But deep inside her heart, amidst the ruins of betrayal, a strange, fragile feeling began to bloom. Compassion. And that was only the beginning. The wedding hall emptied slowly, leaving behind the shattered fragments of what was once a celebration. Bouquets lay scattered on the floor, chairs toppled, candles still flickering as if unwilling to accept that the night had turned dark. The violinists quietly packed their instruments, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Alina stood near the altar, the train of her gown trailing across the marble, her veil half torn and tangled around her wrist. In her arms the newborn baby slept soundly, unaware of the storm that had just erupted. Eli stood beside her, eyes wide and red, his small hands clutching the edge of her dress like an anchor in a world too big and cruel. Her mother, Miriam, approached hesitantly, her face pale and tight. Alina, sweetheart, she whispered, let's go home. You need to rest. But Alina didn't move. Her gaze was fixed on the door Daniel had disappeared through minutes earlier. He didn't even look back. She said softly, almost to herself. Not once. Her mother sighed, her voice trembling. Let him go. He's shown you who he truly is. Alina turned then, slowly, her eyes glistening. And what about them? She looked down at Eli and the baby. He left them, too. The boy flinched slightly, guilt flickering across his face. I'm sorry, he murmured, barely audible. I didn't mean to ruin your wedding. The innocence in his voice broke her heart. She knelt in front of him, her dress pooling around her, and brushed a tear from his cheek. You didn't ruin anything, Eli, she whispered. You saved me. The boy looked up at her, uncertain. I did. Yes, she said firmly, her voice steady now. You told the truth when no one else would. That's something only a brave person could do. He stared at her for a long moment before his lower lip trembled, and he fell into her arms, sobbing. I was so scared, he cried. Mummy said to find you, but I didn't know if you'd believe me. Alina held him tightly, her own tears falling freely now. I believe you, Eli. I believe every word. Her mother watched quietly, eyes glistening. "Let's take them home," she said gently. "They need care, and so do you." Alina nodded. Outside, the night was cool and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos left behind in the hall. As they walked to the car, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement, painting faint halos around them. Eli kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting Daniel to appear. But he didn't, he never would. 2 hours later, the mansion was still. The clock ticked softly in the background as Alina sat on the edge of her couch, the baby asleep in her arms. Eli sat beside her, his knees pulled to his chest, wrapped in a blanket far too big for him. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The only sound was the faint wind brushing against the windows. Finally, Alina broke the silence. "Ali," she said softly, "oh, did you find me?" He sniffled, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. "Mommy told me your name. She said you were the only one who could make things right." Alina frowned gently. "Did she tell you where to find me?" He nodded. "She showed me a picture once. Of you and him. I remembered your face. And when she got sick, she told me to wait until Hope was born. Then she made me promise." His small voice cracked. "She said if anything happened to her, I had to find the lady in white who smiles like the sun." Alina's breath caught in her throat. The lady in white. She looked down at her wedding dress, still creased and wrinkled. "She meant me." But Eli nodded, tears welling again. "I didn't know if I'd make it. I took Mommy's old bag and I walked to the bus station. I told the man there I was going to my aunt's wedding. He didn't ask questions. I just kept going." Alina stared at him in shock. "You came here all alone, with a newborn?" He nodded shyly. "Hope cried a lot. But I sang to her like Mommy did. She always stopped crying when I sang." Her throat tightened. This little boy, fragile, exhausted, yet so fiercely protective, had done the impossible. He had crossed a city, maybe more, to save a stranger's heart from being broken beyond repair. She reached out and brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. "You're incredible, Eli." He smiled faintly, but it faded quickly. "What's going to happen now?" Alina hesitated. The truth was, she didn't know. Her wedding was destroyed, her future uncertain, and yet somehow, she felt more alive than she had in months. "I don't know yet," she admitted softly, "but I promise you this. You and Hope won't be alone." The boy's eyes widened. "You mean we can stay?" She smiled gently. "For as long as you need to." Eli looked down at his sister and then back at her. "Mommy said you had a kind heart." I think she was right. Tears welled in her eyes again. But this time they weren't only from sorrow. They were from something deeper. A warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. She stood and carried Hope to a nearby guest room, laying the baby gently in a crib her mother had hastily prepared. Eli followed quietly, clutching his blanket. "Would you like to sleep here tonight?" she asked him. He nodded, yawning. "Only if you're close by." She smiled. "I'll be right next door." When she turned off the light, she lingered for a moment at the doorway, watching him curl up beside the crib, one hand resting on the edge to keep his baby sister close. Something in her chest softened. Despite all the pain and betrayal, there was a strange peace in that quiet room, a sense of purpose she hadn't known she needed. As she walked back to her own room, Alina paused by the window, staring at the dark city below. Somewhere out there, Daniel was likely drowning in excuses, but she didn't care anymore. Her heart still ached, but it wasn't hollow. It was full of something new. She looked back toward the faint light spilling from the children's room, and whispered, "Maybe this was meant to happen." And though the night outside was heavy with silence, she could almost swear she heard a soft voice. Sarah's voice. Carried by the wind, whispering, "Thank you." Morning light spilled softly through the curtains, bathing the room in a pale golden glow. The mansion, once filled with laughter and music, was now quiet, too quiet. Alina stirred awake on the couch, still wearing her wrinkled wedding dress. Her mascara had smudged, her curls had fallen loose, and yet, despite the ache in her heart, she felt an odd calmness. The faint cry of a baby echoed from the guest room. She sat up instantly and hurried down the hall. When she opened the door, she found Eli already awake, sitting beside the crib. His little fingers stroked his sister's tiny hand gently, whispering something only she could hear. "Good morning," Alina said softly. Eli turned, his eyes heavy but bright. "She was hungry, so I gave her the bottle your mom brought. I hope that's okay." A small smile tugged at Alina's lips. "That's more than okay, sweetheart." She walked over and touched the baby's cheek, her heart tightening at the sight. Hope stirred, blinking open her tiny eyes for the first time since last night. There was something about her, something fragile yet powerful, that made Alina's throat tighten. She felt an urge to protect this child, not just because of the cruelty that brought her here, but because of the innocence she represented. A new beginning. Eli looked up at her. "Are we still staying here?" "Of course," she said softly. "You're safe here." He nodded, relief flooding his face. But she could see it, the fear still lingering in his eyes, the kind that didn't vanish overnight, the kind born from betrayal. As she poured cereal for him in the kitchen a few minutes later, Alina's mother entered, her face tired but kind. "You didn't sleep much," Miriam said. "I couldn't," Alina admitted. "Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing there, lying. And then that boy, his voice." Miriam sighed, resting a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Sometimes life breaks us in ways that only truth can repair." Alina nodded slowly. "I thought I knew him, Mom. I thought he was everything I ever wanted. People wear masks," Miriam murmured. "But the truth always finds its way through the cracks." Her gaze shifted toward the hallway. "What will you do about the children?" Alina hesitated, glancing at the kitchen doorway where Eli was quietly eating, small hands trembling as he lifted the spoon. "I don't know yet," she said. "But I can't let them go back to nothing. They're not your responsibility," her mother said gently. Alina looked up, her eyes filled with quiet determination. "They are now." 2 later that day, Alina stood on the balcony, the wind tugging gently at her hair. Below, the city hummed as though the world hadn't just come undone. Her phone buzzed. A dozen missed calls, countless messages. Some from friends, others from journalists who had caught wind of what happened. A scandal like this didn't stay private for long. She silenced it all. Her thoughts wandered to Daniel. Was he hiding? Running? Or maybe convincing himself that he was still the victim? She didn't care. He was a ghost now. One she intended to leave buried. But there was one thing she couldn't stop thinking about: Sarah. Who was she really? What had she gone through? What kind of love had she once believed in that ended in such pain? The thought gnawed at her until she decided she needed to know. That evening, after dinner, she sat with Eli in the living room. The baby slept nearby in a bassinet. A quiet fire crackled, painting the room in warm light. "Eli," she said softly, "can you tell me more about your mom?" He hesitated, staring into the flames. "She was kind," he said finally. "She laughed a lot, even when things were bad. She used to sing while cooking. And she loved Hope before she was even born." His voice faltered. "She got sick after Hope came. We didn't have money for a doctor. I tried to help, but she kept getting weaker." Alina's throat burned. "And Daniel?" Eli's eyes darkened. "He stopped coming. He said we'd ruin his life." Mummy cried for days. But then she wrote a letter. She said one day, "I'd meet someone who could take care of us. Someone who had the heart he never did." Alina felt her heart twist. "Do you still have that letter?" Eli nodded slowly. He reached into the pocket of his small jacket and pulled out a crumpled envelope, worn and creased from travel. "I kept it safe," he whispered. "It was the last thing she gave me." Alina took it carefully, hands trembling. The handwriting on the front was delicate, the ink slightly smudged for Alina. The woman he deceived. Her breath caught. "She knew," she whispered. "She knew about me." Eli nodded. "She said you were good. That you deserved the truth." Tears blurred her vision as she unfolded the letter. Sarah's handwriting was neat but faint, the words shaky. "To dear Alina, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Please don't hate me. I didn't know how else to make him face what he's done. I loved Daniel once, foolishly, blindly. I believed every promise he made until I realized they were all meant for someone else, you. But even then, I didn't want revenge. I just wanted him to tell you the truth. You deserve that much. When my son Eli came into this world, he became my reason to stay strong. When Hope arrived, she became my reason to let go, because I knew I couldn't stay. Take care of them if you can. Not because of him, but because of the love that still lives in this world, even when it's buried under lies. Tell them about kindness. Tell them about forgiveness. With love, Sarah." Alina's tears fell silently onto the page. The letter trembled in her hands. Eli watched her, his eyes glistening. "Mommy said you'd understand." She nodded slowly, pressing the letter to her chest. "I do." In that moment, something changed inside her. The rage that had burned in her heart since the wedding began to fade, replaced by something quieter but stronger. Resolve. She looked at Eli, then at the sleeping baby. Your mother was brave. And she was right about one thing. Eli tilted his head. What's that? Alina smiled softly through her tears. Love still lives in this world, even after everything. As the firelight flickered over their faces, Eli's expression softened for the first time. He leaned against her arm, eyes fluttering closed. And for the first time since her world had fallen apart, Alina felt peace. But the story was far from over. Because somewhere, in the shadows of the city, Daniel wasn't done running. And fate wasn't done with any of them yet. The following days unfolded with an uneasy calm. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows of Alina's home, reflecting off marble floors and filling the air with quiet warmth. Yet beneath that calm exterior lay the weight of decisions not yet made. Each morning, the echo of that ruined wedding returned to her mind. Daniel's denial, Eli's trembling voice, and the unshakable truth revealed before everyone. Eli had begun to settle into the rhythm of the house. He was cautious yet polite, always careful not to be in the way. Alina noticed how he lingered in the hallway whenever she moved from one room to another, as if afraid she might disappear. Hope slept peacefully most of the time, her small face serene in the crib placed near the window. Watching them both, Alina felt the stirrings of something maternal she had never known existed within her. Her mother, however, was uneasy. One afternoon, Miriam joined her in the sitting room, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Alina, she began quietly, this cannot continue indefinitely. The authorities will need to be informed. The boy has lost his mother, and the infant must be registered properly. You cannot keep them without some form of guardianship. Alina nodded slowly. I understand. But they have no one else, mother. If I call the authorities now, they might be separated. That may be true. Miriam replied gently. But you must also protect yourself. The press is still talking about the wedding. There are already stories circulating that you have taken in the children of your former fiancé's mistress. Alina's expression darkened. Let them talk, I know the truth. Miriam hesitated, studying her daughter's face. And what of Daniel? He has not contacted you. Alina shook her head. No, not once, but he will. Men like him always return. Not out of remorse, but because they cannot bear to lose control. Her words proved prophetic sooner than she expected. That evening, as dusk settled over the city, a car pulled up outside the mansion. The sound of tires crunching on the gravel made Alina rise from her chair. Through the window, she saw the familiar black sedan, and her heart tightened. Daniel stepped out, his once immaculate suit now wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He stood at the gate for several seconds, as though uncertain whether he had the right to enter. Finally, he approached the door. Eli, who had been drawing quietly near the fireplace, stiffened. It's him, he whispered. Alina's pulse quickened. She placed a protective hand on his shoulder. Stay here. When she opened the door, Daniel stood there in silence, the evening wind brushing through his disheveled hair. Alina, he said hoarsely, please. I just need to talk. Her expression remained calm but guarded. You have very little to say that could matter anymore. I know, he replied, his voice cracking. I know I don't deserve to be here. But please, just hear me out. She stepped aside, though her body remained rigid. 5 minutes. Inside, Daniel glanced around the house as though seeing ghosts. His gaze lingered on the bassinet in the corner. So, it's true. He murmured. You kept them. Alina's eyes flashed. Kept them. They are not objects, Daniel. They are children, your children. He flinched. I never wanted this, he said softly. Sarah was never supposed to. Never supposed to what? Alina interrupted sharply. To carry your child. To die alone. To send her son to beg a stranger for the truth you were too cowardly to tell. He covered his face with his hands. I was terrified. I thought if you knew, you'd leave me. She took a step closer, her voice cold. And what did you think would happen when the truth came out anyway? That you could hide a life you created. That no one would ever find you. His eyes glistened. I made a mistake, Alina. But I love you. I still do, love. Her voice trembled between fury and sorrow. If this is love, I want nothing of it. Love is honesty, Daniel. Love is sacrifice. What you gave was deceit. Eli's quiet voice broke the tension. Mummy said you'd say that. He whispered from behind the doorway. Both adults turned, startled. The boy stepped into the light, his small hands clenched at his sides. She said you'd only be sorry when it was too late. Daniel looked stricken. Eli, I'd. Don't. The boy's voice quivered, but his eyes were steady. You left us. You said we didn't matter. Now mommy's gone and you can't fix it. The man stood frozen, words dying on his lips. Alina approached Eli, placing a hand on his shoulder. Go upstairs, sweetheart, she said gently. I'll handle this. When the boy had gone, she turned back to Daniel, her composure unwavering. You need to understand something, she said quietly. There is no forgiveness to be asked for tonight. You destroyed more than one life with your lies. But I will not let your choices define mine. Daniel's shoulders sagged. What are you going to do? I will contact the authorities tomorrow, she replied. A lie and hope deserve protection, and a future free from your shadow. If I am able, I will seek guardianship. He blinked, disbelief etched across his features. You would raise them, my children. Her voice softened, but her gaze was resolute. They are not yours anymore, Daniel. Not in spirit. You abandoned them long before you walked into that church. For a long moment, he stood in silence, his face pale and hollow. Then, without another word, he turned and left. When the sound of his car faded into the distance, Alina closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. She felt both drained and strangely lighter, as though an invisible weight had been lifted. From the staircase, Eli watched her quietly, uncertain. She smiled faintly. He will not hurt you again, she said softly. You have my word. Eli nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. Thank you. Alina crossed the room and knelt before him, brushing his hair back. You are safe now, Eli. Both of you are. For the first time in many days, she believed her own words. Yet, deep down she knew that peace was fragile. And that the path ahead would test them all. Outside, the night deepened. But within those walls, something sacred had begun to grow, the faint, steady pulse of redemption. Weeks passed. The winter air grew colder, but inside Alina's home, warmth began to take root once more. The walls that once echoed with emptiness now carried the soft hum of lullabies, the gentle laughter of a child, and the fragile, healing rhythm of a new life. Every morning, Eli helped Alina in the garden, his small hands covered in soil as he planted tiny seedlings under her guidance. Hope slept in her bassinet near the porch, swaddled in soft blankets, her cheeks pink from the morning air. I think this one will grow the tallest, Eli said proudly, patting the earth around a small rose stem. Alina smiled. Maybe it will. Roses are strong, you know. Even after being cut down, they grow back. He looked up at her, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Like people, she nodded. Exactly like people. There was something extraordinary about the boy. An innocence that hadn't been entirely lost, even after all he had seen. In the weeks that followed the wedding, Alina had come to realize how much his presence had changed her. What had begun as an act of compassion had become something deeper, something that felt like destiny. But with destiny came responsibility. True to her word, Alina contacted social services. The process was long and grueling. She sat through interviews, filled out endless paperwork, and faced scrutiny from officials who couldn't quite understand why a young woman, heartbroken and newly single, would take on 2 children who weren't hers. Her answer never changed. Because love doesn't need permission to exist. She told them simply. It was that quiet conviction that eventually swayed them. Within a month, Alina was granted temporary guardianship of Eli and Hope, while the court finalized the adoption. The day she received the letter confirming it, she cried. Not tears of sorrow this time, but tears of peace. On a Sunday morning, Alina took Eli and Hope to the small hill overlooking the sea, just beyond the city. It was the place she used to visit with her father before he passed. A place where the world felt wide and forgiving. The air was crisp, the waves below crashing against rocks in a steady rhythm. Eli held Hope's bottle while Alina spread a blanket across the grass. This is what Mommy wanted, Eli said suddenly. Alina looked at him. What do you mean? She used to talk about the ocean. He explained softly. She said one day we'd go see it with him. But that never happened. I think maybe she just wanted us to be somewhere peaceful. Alina's chest tightened. Then it's good we're here now. Eli nodded, gazing out over the water. Do you think she can see us? Alina followed his gaze toward the horizon. I think she can. And I think she's proud of you. He smiled faintly, brushing at a tear before it could fall. Do you think she forgave him? Alina hesitated, then spoke gently. Maybe she did. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Eli. It means setting your heart free from what hurts you. He thought about that quietly for a while. Do you forgive him? The question hung in the air. The wind tugged at her hair, the ocean whispering softly below. She took a deep breath, her eyes distant. I don't know if I can ever forgive what he did, she admitted. But I can forgive myself. For believing in the wrong person. For not seeing the truth sooner. That's where healing begins. Eli nodded slowly, as if understanding more than his years allowed. Mummy said people who tell the truth always find their way home. Alina's throat tightened. Then I think you already have. He smiled shyly, then turned his attention to Hope, who was cooing softly in his lap. She likes the sound of the ocean, he said. Maybe she remembers her mom. Alina whispered, more to herself than to him. They stayed there for hours. The three of them. No longer strangers bound by tragedy, but a family stitched together by love, loss, and the truth that had saved them all. One evening, weeks later, Alina received a letter. There was no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Daniel's. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single page, creased and worn. Chor Alina, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I left the city. I needed to see what I'd done from far away. I've spoken to the authorities, confirmed everything, and signed the papers that make Eli and Hope legally yours. They deserve a better father than I could ever be. I've lost everything because of my lies. But maybe that's justice. You once said love is honesty. I see that now. If there's any kindness left in your heart, let the children remember me not as a monster, but as a man who finally understood too late. I hope you find happiness, Alina. Daniel. She folded the letter quietly, staring at the firelight flickering across the paper. The pain she once felt at his name no longer cut as deeply. There was no anger left. Only a distant sorrow and a strange sense of closure. She looked over at Eli, who was sitting on the rug building blocks while Hope babbled happily beside him. Everything okay? He asked, noticing her expression. Yes, she said softly, placing the letter into the drawer. Everything's okay now. He grinned. Can we have pancakes for dinner? She laughed through a tear. Of course we can. 2 months later, spring arrived. The garden outside bloomed with color. The roses Eli had planted stood tall, their petals bright against the green. Hope had learned to sit up, her laughter filling every corner of the house. And Alina, once broken and uncertain, had rediscovered herself in the quiet moments between lullabies and bedtime stories. On the anniversary of the wedding that never was, she didn't cry. Instead, she took the children back to that same hill overlooking the ocean. They brought flowers, white lilies, and placed them gently at the edge of the cliff. For your mom, Alina whispered, her arm around Eli. He nodded, smiling bravely. For Mommy. The wind swept over them, carrying the scent of salt and the sound of distant waves. Alina watched as the sunlight danced on the water. And for the first time, she didn't feel the weight of what was lost. Only gratitude for what had been found. Eli leaned against her side, his small voice barely audible. Are we really a family now? She smiled, her eyes glistening. Yes, sweetheart, we are. The baby giggled, a sound pure and untainted, and the world seemed to pause for just a moment. The boy who had once walked into a wedding with a newborn in his arms had changed everything. He had broken lies, mended hearts, and reminded everyone that sometimes the most unexpected people bring the most powerful truths. And as the sun sank low behind the horizon, painting the sea in gold, Alina whispered to the wind, Thank you, Sarah, for sending